We have told the world we want one set of rules for us and another set for everybody else. Just think about it. We said, oh, this global warming is a real big problem. I hope you'll do something about it. We have no intention of cooperating with you. We have said, we really don't want Iran to have a nuclear bomb. And we don't. That's the right position. Then we said, but we're going to be the only country ever to withdraw from the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty that every president from Dwight Eisenhower through me supported. The UN asked me, it was one of the nicest moments I ever had as president. They asked me to be the first world leader to sign that test ban treaty, not because of me, although we closed the deal, but because every American president of both parties had led the charge for it. And then they withdrew and spent 5 years trying to develop 2 new nuclear weapons. Now, you think you could sell that? I don't want you to have one of what I have 1,500 of already and am busting a gut to get 2 more of. Maybe you could sell that. I think that's a hard sell. And don't you think the world didn't notice either and feel more insecure? I'll give you another example. We got all these men and women in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Whatever your position is, you don't want them to be tortured if they're captured, and you know it's illegal to do it, right? So we say, please don't torture our soldiers if you capture them. But we refuse to be bound by the Geneva Convention on Human Rights, which prohibits the torture of people captured in combat. You cannot do that. You can't do it. You just think about it. And this is where I think our whole party is united on this, but you just can't go around in a world where we can't solve a single problem on our own. You think about it. We can't solve global warming or terrorism or the spread of nuclear and chemical materials or the spread of global epidemics or anything else all by ourselves. You got to send a different message. So here's our message. America is back. We are back in the cooperation business. We're going to work with you whenever we can and act alone only if we have to, not the other way around. We're back in the diplomacy business. And we'll have diplomacy with friend and foe alike whenever we can and use military force only as a last resort, not the other way around. That's the right message. Now, to be credible on that message, the world will have to see us bringing our soldiers home from Iraq, and she believes it's time to do that. Now, she believes it's time for several reasons. One is, look, nobody wants Iraq to fail. You want them to make it. But as General Petraeus proved in his testimony, if they think we have an open-ended commitment, they'll take it and pocket it and avoid making the hard decisions necessary for their country to succeed. They have to decide, not us, how to split the oil money and how to share the political power. And people do not make hard decisions before they have to.
That's right.
Did you ever wonder why they try to never let you get out of the dentist office till you agree to the next appointment? Really, they practically throw their bodies in front of the door, right? I mean, I'm 61. I still don't want anybody to stick a needle in my gums. Now, we're laughing, but that's peanuts compared to this. These are hard decisions. So her position is, if we start coming home at a brigade or 2 a month, consistent with our obligation to our own civilians and the Iraqis that stuck their necks out for us, they'll start making those decisions, and the rest of the world come in here and try to help them. We have to do it for the fight against Al-Qaeda. The Commandant of the Marine Corps just sent 3,500 Marines to Afghanistan. You saw where they tried to kill the president the other day. The Al-Qaeda make another run at him. They always do in the springtime. You know what he said? I'm sending them, but they can't stay very long unless you let me bring the Marines home from Iraq. We have been there longer than we were in World War II. The young people have done what they can. We have 4,000 lost lives, 70,000 wounded people, and we have spent the land forces of America. We have used the Army, the Marine Corps, the National Guard, the reserves. Big story in the paper a couple of weeks ago about mental health problems escalating among young people required to do the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th tour. And here's something most people don't know. For a year, we have been training Navy reservists in Army infantry tactics and deploying them to the Iraq theater. You can't have a diplomacy-first strategy if the world thinks your military is in a shred. So we did what we hired on to do, and then some. If they let the inspectors finish their jobs, it never would have happened. But they did what they did. They have to save their country now. They have to do it, and we have to bring the troops home, and she will do that. Now, she will also rebuild the military. And one more thing. She asked me never to give a talk without saying this. You can save most of the $120 billion a year you're spending there, but not all. Because if she becomes the president, she will never let us make the shameful mistake we made after Vietnam and confuse an unpopular war with our moral obligations to the men and women who serve in it. And let me say, I would be surprised, I would be quite surprised if any young people in this state vote on that issue. Unless you have a loved one or a relative in the military. But if we blow it, you will pay the price. I know. There are 200,000 homeless veterans in this country today. Most of them are my contemporaries. They're Vietnam veterans who had their generation's version of what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. If they had had Hillary's GI Bill for the 21st century, if they had come home to counseling, to serious mental health care, to a decent veterans home to live in if they couldn't live on their own, and not just to education loans, but to small business loans and housing loans and rental assistance, and a follow-up system so that when some of them relapse, as they will a couple of years from now, somebody went and got them back in their rent housing instead of letting them sleep under bridges. This would be a much better country today. She will never let that happen again. And it's a reason I vote for it. Now, why should you pick her to do it? Because she knows more about it and she's trusted to do it by the people that are going to have to do the move in the military. I don't know if you've seen the television ad that's been running in Oregon where Hillary is endorsed by Joe Wilson and Valerie Plame, his wife. Joe Wilson is the guy who refused to lie about the nuclear intelligence for Iraq. And as a penalty for his refusal to fabricate evidence to justify this war, his wife was outed as a CIA agent and they were cratered in their public service. Why did they endorse Hillary? Number one, they know that the way the war authorization vote has been portrayed is not quite accurate. It said that the president could attack Iraq if they failed the inspections. They did that in spite of what they were authorized to do, not with it. Number two, he knows that she's the best qualified to actually execute this. That's why 2 former chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and 35 retired generals and admirals have endorsed her. They want to bring the troops home too. They agree with most of you. But they know it has to be done carefully and that we have to rebuild the military. And they trust her to do it. Why? Because they know when I was in the White House, she was the principal advocate for Vietnam veterans exposed to Agent Orange to get the care they need. She was the principal advocate for the Pentagon to stop ridiculing veterans of the first Gulf War with Gulf War disease and start treating them seriously. They know on the Senate Armed Services Committee, always with a Republican co-sponsor, she passed the following bills: to get body armor to the troops quicker, to save the soldiers' signing bonus for wounded soldiers who couldn't do their whole stint. The Pentagon tried to get it back, the soldiers got to keep it. To test every man and woman coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan for traumatic brain injury. She's good at this. She was the only U.S. Senator asked by the Pentagon to help them plan the future of the military in the 21st century, and they asked her when the Republicans were in the majority because they thought she knew more, cared more, and could do it. In February, when we thought she was going to get out of this race because she had no money and she was getting beat everywhere, she kept carrying the veterans vote because all over this country, people who had done something, knew that she ought to be the president. And you ought to make her the commander-in-chief. Now, here's my last point.